6 flag-draped coffins, 6 families shattered, 6 American soldiers who left home in uniform and came back in silence. This is not a statistic. This is the cost. And tonight, we are going to tell you exactly what happened, why it happened, and why the questions surrounding their deaths may haunt the United States military for years to come. On Sunday, March 1st, 2026, just one day after the United States and Israel launched one of the most aggressive military campaigns in a generation against the Islamic Republic of Iran, a single Iranian drone cut through the pre-dawn air over Kuwait and found its target. The target was not a hardened military installation. It was not a reinforced bunker. It was a makeshift tactical operations center, essentially a large trailer, sitting inside a civilian port, Port Shuaiba, located in the heart of Kuwait's industrial coastline, approximately 10 miles south of Kuwait City. At the moment of impact, 6 American soldiers were inside that building. None of them had any warning. No sirens sounded. No alarm screamed. No counter-drone system was in place to stop what was coming. The building erupted in fear. U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM, confirmed the strike, initially reporting 3 deaths. By Monday afternoon, after recovery teams combed through the smoldering wreckage of the operations center, the death toll had risen. 6 United States service members were dead. 18 more were seriously wounded. These 6 Americans became the first U.S. soldiers killed in direct combat since the launch of Operation Epic Fury, the code name for the joint American-Israeli military campaign against Iran that began just 24 hours earlier on February 28th. The weapon used, based on intelligence assessments reported by CEEPS News and other outlets, it was a Shahed 136 kamikaze drone, a one-way attack drone developed by Iran, produced in the hundreds, designed to be cheap, hard to track, and devastatingly effective against soft targets, and against a building surrounded only by 6-foot-tall concrete walls, with no overhead protection, no air defense battery, and no counter-rocket system in place. It was devastatingly effective. The Pentagon moved quickly to honor the fallen. By Tuesday, 4 of the 6 had been publicly identified. The remaining 2 names were withheld, as is customary, until their next of kin had been officially notified. The 4 identified service members are as follows. Captain Cody A. Cork, 35 years old, Winter Haven, Florida. Cody Cork began his military journey in 2009. He enlisted as a 13P, a multiple launch rocket system and fire direction specialist in the Army National Guard. He was a man who clearly loved his country and his calling. In 2014, he transitioned into the Army Reserve, commissioning as a military police officer. His career took him to Saudi Arabia in 2018, to Guantanamo Bay in 2021, and to Poland in 2024. By every account, Cody Cork was a decorated soldier holding the Meritorious Service Medal, the Army Commendation Medal, the Joint Service Achievement Medal, and the Global War on Terrorism Expeditionary Service Medal, among others. He also held a degree in political science, and by all accounts, he was a man of sharp intellect and deep moral conviction. His family released a statement. They called him the life of the party. They said he had an infectious spirit and a generous heart. They said he felt a calling to serve his country from an early age, and he answered that call every single time. Cody Cork was 35 years old. He will not come home. Sergeant First Class Nicole M. Amore, 39 years old, White Bear Lake, Minnesota. Nicole Amore was a mother, a wife, a soldier. She was assigned to the 103rd Sustainment Command, an Army Reserve logistics unit based out of Des Moines, Iowa. She was 39 years old, and by all accounts, she was the kind of soldier who led by example and lifted those around her. Her husband, Joey Amor, spoke to the Associated Press with words that will stay with anyone who hears them. Joey told reporters that Nicole had been moved off base, away from Camp Arifjan, the main army installation in Kuwait, approximately 1 week before the Iranian strike. She was moved to what he described as a shipping container-style building, the very tactical operations center that would become her final resting place. They were dispersing because they were in fear that the base they were on was going to get attacked, Joey said, and they felt it was safer in smaller groups in separated places. They were trying to protect her. They moved her to what they thought was safety, and the drone found her anyway. You don't go to Kuwait thinking something's going to happen, Joey said, and for her to be one of the first, it hurts. Nicole Amor was 39 years old. A grateful nation mourns her. Sergeant First Class Noah L. Teachins, 42 years old, Bellevue, Nebraska. Noah Teachins was a career soldier, 42 years old, also assigned to the 103rd Sustainment Command. Details on Noah are still emerging, but the Army Reserve has confirmed he served with distinction and dedication. Like his fellow soldiers, he was there to do a job, to keep the logistics chain running, to ensure that American forces across the theater had the food, fuel, water, and ammunition they needed to operate. He was a sustainer, the backbone of any military operation. Noah Teachins was 42 years old. He will not return to Bellevue. Specialist Declan J. Cody, 20 years old, West Des Moines, Iowa. 20 years old. Let that number sit for a moment. 20 years old from Iowa, doing his duty 10,000 miles from home. Declan Cody was a specialist at the time of the attack. In a gesture of posthumous honor, the United States Army promoted him from specialist to sergeant. After his death, he became Sergeant Declan J. Cody, the youngest of the six fallen, and in many ways the face of a generation of young Americans willing to serve in a time of uncertainty and war. He was 20 years old. He should have had decades ahead of him to understand why these six soldiers were in Kuwait, to understand why they were inside a civilian port and not on a hardened military base, to understand why Iran launched the drone that killed them. We need to back up 48 hours to February 28th, 2026, the day the world changed. At approximately 7 o'clock a.m. local time in Tehran, American and Israeli fighter jets, drones, and cruise missiles began striking targets across Iran. The operation, codenamed Operation Epic Fury by the United States and Operation Roaring Lion by Israel, was launched with no formal public address to Congress, no primetime presidential speech, no months of diplomatic posturing. Instead, President Donald Trump announced the campaign in an 8-minute video posted to Truth Social at 2 o'clock in the morning, Eastern Standard Time. The message was blunt. The mission was clear. The targets were specific. Within the first 12 hours alone, U.S. forces conducted an astonishing 900 strikes against Iranian targets. Israeli warplanes, reportedly 200 aircraft, hit nearly 500 targets inside Iran on the first day. The weapons used by American forces included one-way attack drones, Tomahawk cruise missiles, F-A-18 Super Hornets, and F-35 stealth fighters. Reports also indicate the use of what some outlets have referred to as a stealthy Black Tomahawk cruise missile variant. The stated objectives of the campaign were sweeping: destroy Iran's ballistic missile infrastructure, eliminate the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps leadership, annihilate Iran's naval capability in the Persian Gulf and Gulf of Oman, and, though never formally declared, pursue a form of regime change in Tehran. And then came the headline that redrew the map of the Middle East. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the man who had led the Islamic Republic of Iran for 35 years, the man who controlled the most powerful theocratic military force in the region, was killed in an Israeli airstrike on his compound in Tehran. It was arguably the single most consequential political assassination in decades. Khamenei's death created an immediate power vacuum in Tehran. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian announced in a pre-recorded message aired on state television that a leadership council had begun its work. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said a new supreme leader would be chosen within 1 or 2 days. In the meantime, while Iran's political structure reeled, its military structure responded with everything it had. Iran's military response was codenamed Operation True Promise 4, the fourth and most devastating iteration of a retaliatory doctrine that Iran had been refining since 2024. What followed was not a targeted, proportional strike. It was a barrage. Within hours of the initial American and Israeli attacks, Iran launched roughly 420 ballistic missiles and kamikaze drones, not just at Israel, but across the entire Persian Gulf theater. The scale was staggering. Iran targeted Israel, firing approximately 162 missiles at Israeli territory, with at least 8 people killed in the city of Beit Shemesh when missiles landed in a residential area. Iran targeted the United Arab Emirates, launching 167 missiles toward the UAE, striking near Jebel Ali port in Dubai, killing 3 people and injuring 58. Iranian Shahed 136 drones struck Saudi Aramco's massive Ras Tanura oil facility. An Iranian drone set fire to the U.S. consulate in Dubai. Iran targeted Qatar, 46 missiles toward the country that hosts Al Udeid Air Base, one of the most critical American military installations in the Middle East. Iran targeted Bahrain, striking near the Naval Support Activity Facility associated with the U.S. Fifth Fleet. A drone hit a radar installation there. Iran targeted Kuwait, launching missiles toward Ali al-Salam Air Base and other installations, killing 1 person and wounding 32. And somewhere in that storm of metal and fire, 1 drone found Port Shuaiba. 1 drone, 6 dead Americans. The Iranian strikes also expanded to maritime traffic. Iran moved to blockade the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow choke point through which approximately 20% of the world's oil supply flows daily. The blockade declaration sent global energy markets into convulsions, triggering immediate emergency sessions among oil importing teams. Flight operations at Dubai International Airport were suspended following nearby strikes. The conflict had escaped the borders of Iran and was reshaping the region by the hour. Now we return to Port Shuaiba, because the deaths of these 6 soldiers are not just a tragedy. They are raising urgent, uncomfortable questions about military command decisions, force protection failures, and whether the men and women we send to war are being given the tools and the fortifications they need to survive. Here is what we know, based on reporting from CBS News, CNN, the Associated Press, and ABC News. The Tactical Operations Center at Port Shuaiba was not a purpose-built military facility. It was a command and control center constructed from what amounted to a large trailer, a structure that defense officials have described as a prefabricated, above-ground unit encircled by 6-foot-tall concrete walls. There were reportedly sandbags on the roof and along the sides, but there was no overhead protection capable of stopping a drone strike from above. Infrastructure for American troops stationed at overseas logistics hubs like Kuwait has historically relied on these kinds of above-ground, inexpensive modular structures, trailers, shipping containers, makeshift buildings. They are fast to erect, easy to move, and cheap to build. They are not, however, designed to withstand a direct hit from a precision kamikaze drone. The operations center was located in the heart of Port Shuaiba, a working seaport and industrial area just south of Kuwait City, positioned only about 1 mile from commercial cargo piers, surrounded by oil storage tanks, refineries, and a power plant. It was not inside Camp Arif Jan, the heavily fortified main U.S. Army base in Kuwait, located more than 10 miles to the south. It was, in military terminology, a satellite position, an expedient location chosen under pressure. Why were the soldiers there instead of at Camp Arif Jan? The answer, revealed by Joey Amore's account to the Associated Press, is heartbreaking in its irony. The soldiers were dispersed, moved away from the main base, because commanders feared that Camp Arif Jan would itself become a target. The logic was straightforward. Spread out, reduce concentration, minimize casualties if the base gets hit. But Port Shuaiba, the place they moved to, had none of the protections they were trying to escape toward. According to 3 U.S. military officials who spoke to CBS News with direct knowledge of the strike, there were no warning sirens at Port Shuaiba. 2 of those 3 sources said they did not recall hearing the warning sirens that are typically associated with counter-battery detection systems, the kind that would alert personnel to incoming ordnance and give them precious seconds to take cover. The sirens that had been working all week prior to the strike were silent when the drone arrived. Worse, there was no American counter-rocket, artillery, and mortar system, no CRAM at Port Shuaiba, no phalanx gun, no Patriot battery, no interceptor of any kind. The Tactical Operations Center sat, exposed, with nothing capable of shooting down the incoming drone before it detonated. When Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth addressed reporters on Monday, he framed the strike as a single projectile that had penetrated both air defenses and the operations center's fortifications. But that framing raised as many questions as it answered, because the accounts emerging from the ground suggest that the fortifications were minimal, the air defenses were absent, and the warning systems were sunk. Molly Campbell, a drone expert with the Center for a New American Security, addressed the broader vulnerability in an interview with ABC News. She stated that against sophisticated adversaries, there is no way to achieve a 100% interception rate, underscoring the need for more robust physical protection for the buildings in which troops work and sleep. More than a half-century of U.S. air dominance has left American military infrastructure in many overseas locations poorly adapted to the drone age. For a generation of soldiers, the biggest threats were IEDs and small arms fire, not a swarm of autonomous flying munitions launched from 600 miles away. The investment in counter-drone capabilities in the systems, the training, the hardened facilities needed to stop this threat has lagged dangerously behind the threat itself. Tower 22 in Jordan, January 2024, was supposed to be the wake-up call. 3 American soldiers died there in an Iranian proxy drone attack. 47 more were injured. That attack should have triggered a comprehensive audit of every American facility in the region, a reevaluation of force protection standards, a mandate to install counter-drone systems at every exposed position. If that audit happened, Port Shuaiba apparently missed it. 6 American soldiers are dead. They were not generals. They were not special operators. They were not the men and women who appear in recruitment videos jumping from helicopters into enemy territory. They were sustainers. They were the ones who made sure the trucks ran, the fuel flowed, the ammunition was delivered, the water was clean. They were the infrastructure of the United States military. Invisible, essential, present everywhere. Captain Cody Cork, Sergeant First Class Nicole O'More, Sergeant First Class Noah Teachins, Sergeant Declan Cody, and two more, names still known only to their families, as notifications are made, as grief is delivered to front doors in Iowa and Nebraska, in Minnesota and Florida, in all the ordinary places that ordinary Americans live until the military comes calling. They did not die in combat. They died in a trailer, in a civilian port, in a country that was supposed to be safe, on the second day of a war that began and may end without a formal declaration from the United States Congress. Their deaths raise questions that go beyond military tactics. They raise questions about accountability, about who decided to put them there, about why there was no protection, about what obligations a democratic government owes to the soldiers it places in harm's way. Those questions will not be resolved tonight. They may not be resolved for months or years, but they cannot be allowed to disappear in the noise of a rapidly expanding conflict. Because if we allow that, if we allow the pace of this war, the scale of the strikes, the headlines about Khamenei and nuclear programs and Iranian naval power, if we allow all of that to wash over the fact that 6 specific human beings died in a trailer in Kuwait because they had no warning and no protection, then we have failed in the most basic duty of a free press and of a free people. Their names deserve to be said out loud. Their stories deserve to be told. Their families deserve answers, and the rest of us, every citizen of this country who sends soldiers to war, who votes for the leaders who order them into harm's way, who benefits from the security those soldiers provide, owes them at minimum this: the honest, unflinching recognition that they died, that they mattered, and that the manner of their deaths demands a full accounting.